Hi, I'm Dan Twing with EMA, and I'm going to be talking today about the state of workload automation in 2023. And thank you all for joining us for Automation Week. I thought I'd start out with the 4 key workload automation and orchestration trends in 2023 that I identified in the most recent EMA radar report that was recently published. Each time I do the report, I try to summarize the 4 biggest impressions I got from going through the process of looking at all the products and talking to 30 to 40 users of all those various products. And this year, these are the 4 things that came to the forefront for me. Integration evolution. So a lot of things have changed with integrating workload automation and orchestration tools in the last, say, 4 to 5 years. If you look back about 6 years ago, there started to be a trend to create tools for self-help, to let you do your own integrations. And that was great. It allowed enterprises to do custom things. But the reality is, and where we seem to have come today, is a lot of the users prefer to get their integrations from the vendors directly when possible. And we've seen all of the products in this category create a lot more integration capabilities themselves. In some cases, the frequency of that is starting to outpace even the releases for the product itself, because the users pretty much prefer to get a integration done by the vendor if it's in a timely fashion. It's backwardly compatible, it's supported. You can still alter it a bit if you need to with some of the custom capabilities. So we've seen the vendors really step that up, and that's a key component to orchestration, which we're going to talk a lot about. That's sort of the overarching mega trend here for workload automation, is this concept of orchestration, which I will talk quite a bit more about as we move through the presentation. But the first key part of being able to orchestrate across a broader set of processes in the organization is to have the tool integrated with all of the different systems that might be involved. And there's been a significant effort to do that. Another thing that popped up this year is mainframe modernization has really come to the forefront. The compute part of workload automation has really been focused on cloud computing for a decade, right? How do we do better to support jobs in the cloud, integrating the workload tools with different cloud environments? And I'm not in any way saying that has become less important, but we've reached a pretty high level of maturity with cloud support. And it seems that on the compute side of things, in 2023, there's a lot of focus on mainframe modernization. So, we're really trying to catch the mainframe up to a lot of the work that's been done with the ability to run workloads in the cloud, or the ability to host the workload tools themselves in the cloud. Again, cloud has matured, and mainframe is sort of let's pull that forward. The mainframe modernization in many ways can take the form of transforming to align to cloud and support digital transformation. So, whether that's refactoring, replatforming, pulling those mainframe processes into the cloud on a replatform kind of process, or just re-engineer it in place on the mainframe. There's a lot of that different kind of work going on. But bringing the mainframe sort of more modern connections to these tools, more capabilities, and really get it back on par with a lot of the work that's been done on cloud for the last number of years. And this is a different order than I touched them in the report, because I want to dive a little deeper on the last bullet here. So DevOps as the spark for broader orchestration is another concept that I see. We see a lot more focus on DevOps. And really, in talking to a number of organizations, oftentimes when they really drill into to automate DevOps, in many cases, it's really the first time a lot of developers are getting more exposure or deeper exposure to the broader orchestration capabilities of workload automation. And once they're exposed to that through the DevOps process, they can begin to see how they could pull that into some of their other app processes, app development process, use the workload tool to orchestrate those processes rather than coding additional capabilities into those processes. So that doesn't necessarily have to start with DevOps, but I often talk to organizations where that's really the first point where their developers started to see the power of orchestration capabilities. And of course, if you're going to orchestrate across a broad set of processes, data pipeline management maturity is a big part of that. A lot of these processes are involve moving data, getting data into the right format, into the right places at the right time. And we've seen a lot of maturity in how data pipelines are managed. In fact, I wanted to drill down on that just a little bit. Moving data and managing data pipelines is really a key part of this orchestration concept we're going to talk about throughout this presentation. WLA has always played a key role in moving enterprise data to where it needed to be, when it needed to be there. Over time, this has sort of changed. We have this, whether you integrate a managed file transfer product into the workload flow, the job stream flow, or in many cases, workload automation and orchestration tools have added native capabilities for managed file transfer. Either way it's done, there's a lot of different capabilities that are provided. First of all, you have that centralized control, end-to-end visibility. You can use APIs or agents to control the various tools within each stage. It really helps with observability and data governance, and really brings the data ops lifecycle management from dev to test to production. So similarly to what can happen with bringing these workload automation and orchestration capabilities to DevOps, there's also a lot of benefit in data ops. Integration with IT operations infrastructure tools is a big part of that. You have workload tools that are already plugged into the communication and collaboration tools like Slack or Teams. We have sophisticated, proactive, and even prioritization around alerting in workload that you can, that's immediately leverageable regarding the data pipeline management, and integration with service desks and automated ticketing. Also, analytics to quickly identify root cause of issues, and SLA policy awareness all exists within the workload tool, and all of that adds value to managing the data pipelines. In fact, using workload automation and orchestration really can speed the development and make the process more manageable and successful. So as we kind of move from those trends, that overarching theme of orchestration will be something I'm going to talk quite a bit about. Automation really is expanding across the enterprise. We all feel it, whether they're routine tasks like data entry or inventory management, customer support, to much more complex end-to-end processes like supply chain management or quality control and inspection and manufacturing, are just a couple of examples. Businesses are really leveraging automation to enhance the customer experiences and engage with customers on a more individualized level. Automation is really being integrated in decision-making processes as well, and allowing folks to make informed choices based on real-time insights. We get this through data analysis and predictive modeling. So all this data we're moving in data pipelines, some of that is also affecting the flow of these processes. Automation done right contributes to enterprise growth and competitiveness. So how do you do it right? Well, I thought we'd talk for a moment about the automation versus orchestration concepts. We kind of throw these terms around a lot, and it helps to pull back and kind of really understand in a pure definition what the differences are. Automation, in its purest definition, is the use of technology to replace manual tasks and automated processes, enhancing efficiency and reducing human intervention. It focuses on streamlining routine and repetitive tasks. So things like individual tasks, they're very repetitive and they tend to be rule-based. Now, the previous slide I talked about broad automation across an enterprise. So sometimes we all use that automation term very broadly, but in its really specific definition, it would be what I have here. It's when you add orchestration that you start to coordinate complex end-to-end workflows involving multiple tasks, systems, and stakeholders. You're achieving a specific business objective by connecting and optimizing processes and decision-making capabilities. So some of the big differences here between the basic automation and orchestration are that we have intricate workflows spanning multiple components, multiple processes. Rather than being fixed rule-based, we can make decisions along the way based on the data, based on outcomes and return codes, and there's more real-time coordination. So as automation becomes more complex, we have the need to orchestrate this across various tasks and systems, and that becomes more critical with more complexity. So how do we apply those definitions in workload automation? And this will be a little bit repetitive, but trying to pull it closer to workload automation specifically. So in workload automation, we're emphasizing more the scheduling, the execution, the monitoring of routine, repetitive tasks, primarily within a specific domain. So, historically it was all of data center operations activities. It didn't really reach outside of that very far, although we've been moving in that direction for years now. It tended to be simpler, more well-defined tasks that don't require the integrated or intricate coordination and decision-making. So your traditional batch scheduling, data backups, other kinds of routine system maintenance, all those things were traditionally what we called workload automation. When you add orchestration, you start to bring you're managing more complex, more end-to-end workflows that might span multiple systems, applications, across departments, and you're really aiming for a broader business objective, not a specific individual's task or set of similar tasks. Orchestration handles these intricate processes with dependencies, with decision logic along the way, and adaptability to changing conditions. Some examples here are IT service provisioning, incident response, auto remediation, other complex business process automation. The key distinction is that scope, complexity, and sort of the purpose of each concept. Now, right on this page, you might be thinking, yeah, but I have some very complex job streams I've defined that almost fit the orchestration definition more than the traditional workload automation definition. And I would say you're absolutely correct in thinking that. This has not been a flip a switch kind of migration process, right? We've been moving in this direction for decades. I think as job streams could get more complex, a lot of those orchestration capabilities have been slowly being added to workload automation over a long period of time, driven a lot by the convergence of trends like multi-cloud, hybrid environments, the data pipelines we've been managing, AI and machine learning have all added capabilities, and the digital transformation has really forced the use of those to push the boundaries of workload automation. So this is a process that's been happening for some time. It's really accelerated in the last couple of years, and we're very aggressively adding far more sophisticated orchestration capabilities across the industry than we've had. But this really has sort of been happening over a big arc of time. So the rate of change has accelerated, and we've seen a lot of things like in the expanded functionality, the integration capabilities, reporting and analytics. For years, we've seen enhancements there, and it's getting better all the time. Really, the adaptability of the tool to orchestrate processes with dynamic requirements and in real time. Some of these are things that are starting to become more sophisticated, but we'll see a lot more change here in the coming years. Cloud and DevOps integration, of course, a lot of customization to embed design logic within workflows, and more AI and machine learning to advise these intelligent decisions and adapt to changing conditions. So the tools will become even more dynamic than they are now. So really, WLA is becoming a unified automation platform, providing this single interface for managing both routine tasks and complex end-to-end processes. And having all of that in one place can really simplify the administration of all this automation. And just as a proof point from research that I did earlier this year, and you may have seen some of these data points if you followed some of my other webinars. Workload automation and orchestration really does reach across the enterprise. We've seen, I asked 3 different questions about how different departments within an enterprise are affected by workload automation. The first was, react to this statement: workload automation is extremely or very important to workloads. And here I'm only showing the top 6 responses under each question, but those that said that it was extremely or very important, finance floats to the top of the list. And anybody who's using these tools to help with the monthly close, you certainly are aware of that. But you see it touches lots of the enterprise: supply chain, service, sales, human resources, manufacturing. All understand that, or at least the folks taking the survey understand that the workload automation tool is key to every one of those departments. Looking at it a slightly different way, business functions that use the self-service capabilities within the workload tool, who's using that multiple times per week or even daily? And what we see here is the service organization was the most mentioned as using it daily or multiple times per week, followed by sales, supply chain. No surprise it's finance would slide down that list a bit, because they're probably more focused on that month end or quarter end or year end close, whereas service and sales, they're more likely to have frequent interactions multiple times a week. And then who's sponsoring new initiatives for automation and orchestration? Well, here it's no surprise that IT ops is still the biggest source of those things, and in many cases they're probably reacting to what others are asking of them. App development teams are next. Again, no surprise there. But then we see the other business departments, service again right at the top of the list, having more requests for new initiatives. Finance, supply chain, sales. You see the repeating here. There are several departments that absolutely look to automation from workload tools and the orchestration capabilities to do what they need done, overnight, every night, and give them the capabilities they need. So it's really workload automation really is kind of consistently delivering on these critical processes already. Digital transformation is closely intertwined with this enterprise automation trend, and we really see digital transformation involves leveraging a lot of digital technologies to fundamentally change and improve business processes, business operations, customer experiences. In some cases, it can even help with changing business models. Cloud computing serves as a foundational element for a lot of digital transformation initiatives. It provides the infrastructure, a lot of different resources, and in many cases, packaged services, whether those are storage based or data management based. So we're leaning into the cloud a lot for digital transformation, which is, of course, why we've seen a lot of the cloud enhancements in and around workload automation. But automation helps enterprises adapt, innovate, and thrive in an increasingly digital competitive landscape. My research earlier this year showed that 97% of enterprises are actively working on digital transformation. Here's a data point that, for me, as I was looking at digital transformation, we've been talking about this for a long time. I mean, it's been over 10 years. I think the first reference of it was about 11 years ago. There was a paper written by one of the consulting firms that was really describing the work they were doing to automate processes for organizations, for enterprises, as digital transformation. So, it's a topic we've talked about for a long time. I wanted to understand just where are we in that process. And so this was originally written as a question with 10 or 12 options. A lot of those in the middle 3 columns there were 2 or 3 questions combined together, all trying to capture where are you at as an organization. And you can see only 3% said, I'm not doing anything with digital transformation. 40% were in one of those 3 options I gave them that I would lump together as the early stages. So I'm planning, I'm looking at processes, I'm modernizing applications, maybe I'm doing something to modernize mainframe. I'm getting ready for digital transformation. to, we're about to start our first project. We kind of have number of projects defined. All of those, that spectrum I would call early. Then there's those who are underway. We've built the first process, or we're underway with the first process. We have one deployed, but we have several more, that are in development. So various stages of, we're on the path. We're actively, coding and deploying digital processes. To those that are more mature, we've either, we've done everything we had planned and we're thinking about what's next, or we think we're done. And folks in that category, I put in this mature column. And then the purple bar on the far right, are you so far along that you're already thinking about what is the next generation, version 2.0 of digital transformation? And you can see about 4% of organizations are actually starting to think about that next phase. Which makes sense, because you've got the early, they were probably in that early adopter group. And what we see in the early and underway folks right now is the late majority and the early majority kind of moving into this process. But we have really just 40% are just beginning this. And so there's an opportunity for them to learn from the folks that have gone before them. And workload automation and orchestration does a lot to support this digital transformation journey. WA supports DevOps processes and increases development speed was the most selected option for how are you using workload to support your digital transformation. And you can see that 51% selected that. And almost the same number, 50% selected workload automation is used for cloud infrastructure configuration. So, developers are using these tools to automate and speed up the process to develop and deploy these digital transformed processes. But workload can do even more than that. You can see it's there, obviously also doing on-premises infrastructure config. File transfer we've talked about is a big part of this. But some of the things lower on the list are more interesting to me, because this is just emerging. But using workload automation and orchestration to connect disparate digital transformation capabilities. So I have two different processes and I need to move data between them, or one needs to be aware of the status of the other. This is an orchestration capability that fully a third of these organizations that are underway with digital transformation are leaning on workload tools to accomplish. They're automating release management. That's really supporting more of those development efforts. But and using it just in its traditional role as just a scheduler. But below that, workload automation is key for end-to-end orchestration for one or more digital capabilities. So there are 27% are using workload to assist these digital processes along the pathway. And most interesting to me is this last one. Workload automation orchestration allows new applications and digital transformation with less developer time. Really leaning, into these tools and leveraging them. That's just 15% at this point, but they are absolutely getting value out of that. And we talked a lot about workload automation and orchestration supporting cloud operations. So I asked this question: which of these are either important or very important? This was a standard 5-point scale, but we see a significant number, 78%, find cloud infrastructure automation to be important or very important. A lot about moving data either between the different hybrid cloud environments, simplifying cloud migrations, and so forth. So you can see that there's a lot of support to cloud, which is highly integrated with the digital transformation processes. So taking kind of a step back and saying, so how are organizations relating to these tools? And if we see that we're using these tools for infrastructure config and other aspects of supporting digital transformation, and developers are being closer, I wanted to understand, where are these organizations with developers in their relationship to the workload automation tool and the teams that support them? So we asked this question: how do you think developers in your organization feel about the workload automation software? And it's a spectrum from, hey, that's all operations on the far left there, right? It's always been operations, and in our organization, it's purely their domain. And there's still a lot of organizations who think that way, 17% in this case. The next one, workload automation, is mostly the domain of operations. So not quite as strong a statement, another 31%. And you can see they're color coded red because I kind of combined them into yeah, it's mostly a tool for operations. And that's reflected in the pie chart on the right. That middle group, about 28%, said, it's necessary for both ops and developers. So yeah, we understand developers might touch it or be supported by it. It's not a big deal in our organization. It's just part of the process. 28%, I kind of labeled that as ops dev neutral. These last two groups are the interesting groups for me. Workload automation is important for operations and developers, or it makes operations and developers more productive and effective. And I labeled those the dev positive group. And when you look at that pie chart then on the far right, you can see that about 24% of organizations have this sort of developer positive attitude toward workload. Another 28% are in that neutral category, but almost half the market is really still living in that traditional space of workload automation is really an operations tool almost exclusively. Where this gets interesting is we ask them, going back to that question, where are you in your digital transformation journey from I'm not doing anything till I'm mature, or I'm focusing now on version 2.0 of digital transformation. When we cross those two questions, and I've maintained the color coding, so that red is still our mostly ops group, the green is that DevOps neutral group, and the blue is the dev positive group. You can absolutely see the correlation here. The further along folks are in their digital transformation journey, the more positive they tend to have. Their developers are closer and more positive about workload automation. Those that live in the old school thinking of it's mostly an ops tool haven't, for the most part, made their way through the journey. And it's not exclusive. There you can see there's some folks that have said that are mostly ops that have achieved digital transformation, but there's an absolute increase in the dev positive the farther you are down digital transformation, which tells me either they knew this up front, or they learned it through the journey that these tools make it easier to achieve digital transformation. And to go further than that, we asked, this is another question I've been asking for a number of years in my various research projects, but workload automation tools should be expanded to orchestrate automation tools automation across the enterprise. And again, crossing that with where are you in your stage of digital transformation? Here, the color coding shifts to the strongly disagree is the red, all the way to strongly agree is the purple. And you can see again the correlation. Those that are farthest along with their digital transformation absolutely understand that they need the support of workload automation tools to orchestrate these processes. So from there, I'm going to shift gears for a moment and look at the radar report specifically. So many of you may have already seen it or received a copy. It's certainly available from the folks at Infinite Data. And I'm sure they will have numerous opportunities where they'll share with you where you can get that. Assessing the workload market, and if you've seen me talk about this before, we go through a process of creating a list of capabilities and features that we first built in 2009, and we've been updating this every 2 years as we reproduce this report. And then we establish a number of key metrics that we're measuring. We identify all the products in the market. The most recent report, I think, had 19 vendors in it. We actually review with the vendors what the measurement criteria are, and they help us build out that questionnaire each time we set out to do the report. We then have the vendors complete that. It has more than 150 points of comparison in it. We vet those responses for accuracy through briefings and demos, and I conduct 2 to 3 customer interviews, actual users for each product, and then we analyze and score the results. I'm going to get right to the chart everybody likes to see. This is the 2023 EMA radar for workload automation and orchestration. And you'll notice that we have added the and orchestration to this. I think it's certainly time to acknowledge that this is a major part of these tools now. And just to remind you, if you're not familiar with this, we actually modified this chart a bit this year. Since we really aren't rating products that fall in that lowest category, the lightest shade of green in the lower left-hand part of that chart, we really just shrunk that category to allow more real estate for the rest of it and get the vendors to spread out a little bit more. Simplified the chart a little bit, but it works exactly as it always has. That horizontal product strength category, the vertical part of this chart is measuring architecture, integration, usability, and features. How it's all about the product. It's all about what you get from these products. The horizontal, the cost efficiency, is really measuring how is the licensing structured? Are there various models so you can pick one that fits the way you use the tool? What's the actual licensing costs for various scenarios and setups? But more importantly, what does it take to stand it up, train your staff, get it operating, configure it correctly, and then keep it running correctly over time? And that's, to me, in many cases, far more important than what it actually costs, because you're going to be living with these tools for a very long time. And the staffing that it takes to keep them running correctly and the efficiency with which you can do that is very important. And so think about the horizontal as what do you give up, and the vertical, what do you get? And then the size of these bubbles reflects the vendor strength. And we look at things like their financial stability, their commitment to the market, the kind of R&D they're doing, the how much are they advancing their product with each release, and how often are they doing that? And so, and just their general credibility in the market, how people feel about those tools, and really also their geographic coverage. So we're kind of looking at, the who you get it from is that bubble size. The results, again, you'll see Automate Now from Infinite Data and Beta Systems is really, high on the chart for capabilities. And because of a lot of flexibility, it does quite well on both axes here, and has come out with the highest product strength in this year's report. And let's dive down just a little bit further on the outcome for Automate Now. So, of course, as you could see from the other chart, they are once again a value leader, have been for the last several reports. And if you look at that chart on the right side of the screen, that really breaks down a bit more granularly what we were looking at. So I talked about the product strength side being the functionality and the architecture and integration metrics. Here, those two are shown separately. You can also see deployment and administration show it separately from cost advantage, but those two add up to the horizontal score. And then the vendor strength score here, it turns into that bubble size. If you're looking at this chart, the green reflects the average of all 19 products in the market, and the blue line represents where Automate Now scores. And you can see that it absolutely performs, against the other vendors in the market quite well, beating the averages or meeting the average on cost, beating it on all the other metrics. And I always like to pull some quotes from some of the folks that I talk to when I'm interviewing them about using these tools. And so I've brought some of them in here. You can read those for yourself, but you can see that you've got comments on APIs and how the process works for CI/CD. Some aspects of what folks find valuable, how flexible it is, when I talk to people, they're just very positive about using this tool because it is pretty quick to learn. It is pretty quick to deploy, and they can get a lot of value very early. And and they have these existing integrations that let them move pretty quickly. So folks that use this tool are very happy with it. And that certainly affects how I have scored them in this report. So thinking about where you might go from here, and really looking at what is the future of these tools as we kind of move out of 2023 and into 2024. The first thing I would say is, if you're in that group, that say 40% who's just starting on digital transformation, or if you're in that group that's underway, but you've still got a ways to go. If you haven't discovered yet, as many have, these tools are going to be very important to your success. Learn from those who've gone before you. Understand why they found along the way that leaning on workload automation to orchestrate some of these processes really helped them achieve their digital transformation. As I showed, those farthest down that path, they have their architects and their developers close to these tools, and they have found value in workload automation and orchestration. It helps with collaboration between the traditional IT ops and cloud architects, and that's very important that each understands the other, because if you're going to expose these digitally transformed processes to customers, to employees, to other stakeholders, some vendors and suppliers, maybe, that collaboration with the cloud architects is important, because these are likely to be built in the cloud. And if you want to support them properly, if you want to bring that SLA policy awareness and the monitoring, that ability to make dynamic database decisions along the pathway as you're supporting these processes, you can throw these things in the cloud and find out the hard way you're not supporting them and add it later, or you can bring these architects in early and make sure that it's manageable, monitorable, and supported correctly right from the beginning. And obviously, it would be better to do that sooner. Also, supporting DevOps with automation is, as I said earlier, often the start of orchestration. It's a good place. Get those architects in early, get the developers in early. Start by focusing on DevOps, because those are the processes that they're actually concerned with at the moment. When they learn what you can do to benefit those processes, they'll start to abstract that to what they can do with the other digital processes that they're building. Developers like reuse when it's things that they trust, understand, and know exist. That nobody likes to write code to rebuild something they could quickly leverage and put their efforts into other things that make what they're building better. So the developers will naturally gravitate to that, in my opinion. And I started life as a developer, so I know that would draw me in. But you got to get exposed to it, and I think DevOps is a great way to expose them to this. If you work in these automation teams, think of yourself as the evangelist for automation. Reach out to the business users, let them understand what self-service capabilities are available, and pull them in more. They'll have ideas of what issues they'd like to address. As you are the expert on the automation, you can help them understand how to leverage what you've got here for them. They just need to be brought to it too, just like the developers. And then really get application users engaged with those self-service dashboards. That really helps broaden the benefit of these tools. I really believe that digital transformation could require a lot less code, maybe as much as 25, even 30% less code, if you really leverage the architects and the developers, if they really leverage these tools. And we really need to help them to find that pathway. And so, as I sit back and look at the market, these are the things that I would take away from these current trends and try to change how I'm moving forward to really pull that orchestration megatrend into benefiting you. Others are finding benefit in it. If you're not in that 24% where your developers are positive about these tools, that might be something to really focus on. How do you shift the thinking about these tools? If you're already there and experiencing those benefits, great. If you're not, understand that many of those who've gone before you have found value there. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention on these topics. I hope you got something of value out of this discussion. I'll be joining the Workload Automation Migration Initiatives discussion on October 25th. So if you'd like to join, then you can see me as part of that discussion group. And I hope you'll join us. And thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of Automation Week.